Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. This week, we are down a guest host or a co-host. We are sending healing vibes to our sister, Kimberly Cecil Jones, who has had knee surgery this week and is just home from the hospital recovering. So she is taking the night off. Doug and I will soldier on, and I've got a couple of news stories I want to cover. Then we've got Doug Price is Right coming your way. He's got a deep dive into the coal-coddling politicos in our capital. We'll be joined by former state auditor, now solar energy entrepreneur, Adam Edelen, who will speak about today's momentous anniversary of the signing of the Inflation Reduction Act and whether or not Kentucky should care about this momentous bill. Then we're going to close out with a heartfelt invitation to join us this Saturday at our election campaign kickoff meeting. That will be our weekly call to action. But first, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? We know, folks, our state is deeply red. We've got a GOP supermajority that is committed to moving us backwards on about every issue you care about. LGBTQ plus rights, women's healthcare access, eroding the sanctity of our voting process through gerrymandering and weakening the ability of unions to collectively organize for better pay and better working conditions. So if you want a Commonwealth that works for all of us, join Progress Kentucky. The best way is actually to make plans to join us this Saturday. We're going to be launching our election campaign to send Andy back to Frankfurt. We're going to have an amazing lineup at this meeting. Our co-host Willie and Nima will be there, talking about how important this election is. We're going to have Representative Sherilyn Stevenson, who knows a little bit about tight races and how to win them. And we're going to have our keynote speaker, Colonel Pam Stevenson. So running for Attorney General, regular on this show, somebody we just really care a lot about. So great way to just go all in between now and November. We've got about 83 days to go, folks. So not a lot of time. It's time to get busy. So that's the best way. Join us at Pivot Brewing in Lexington at 6 o'clock on Saturday. We've got a link you can RSVP. We'll put that in the chat so you can let us know that you're coming. But, you can show up, bring a friend or five. The more the merrier. The more that show up, the easier it'll be to reelect Andy is kind of what it means. So I hope you can join us on Saturday. All right. So otherwise, back to the show, right? So let's check in with the co-host, who you are, where you are, and what does your protest sign say today? So I'm coming to you. My name's Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, which is a just truly lovely subdivision. It's a sea of vinyl siding as far as the eye can see. And my sign today says, in keeping with the subject matter, there is no planet B, folks. So yeah, let's get serious about fixing planet A. All right, Doug, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm from Cynthiana, Kentucky, live outside of the city. It's a wonderful place to live. We really enjoy here. I actually have 3 signs today. I'm wearing one of them.
Nice.
This one is because of the timing. Hope everybody can read that.
Look at that throwback.
And I have one that I kind of thought I would wear if I went to Fancy Farm. I wasn't able to go, but here's my t-shirt I would have worn.
Nice. Mitch McConnell putting his donors over your life if you are listening to the podcast. The first sign that Doug had, which is his t-shirt, which is my t-shirt. I'm also doing the t-shirt thing, taking a page of the Doug Price playbook. Is protect trans kids. The second one is Trump is not above the law, which I believe goes back to the first time maybe like we'd ever met or something like that, which was the protest we did for the first impeachment, where we were trying to get Mitch to allow for witnesses in that impeachment trial of Donald Trump. Now Donald Trump, of course, who has been indicted 4 times, setting, I believe, a record for former presidents. Sure. I think one would have been a record, but he is really making sure that he holds that record, right? Anyway, so yeah, good signs, all of them, Doug, and I appreciate them all. And because we're down a co-host, I think it just makes sense that you're bringing a few extra signs to the game. All right, so let's just jump into news of the week. We're going to do a couple of stories. We're going to do a Doug Price is Right, and then we're going to do our guest Adam Edelen. So some exciting stuff to do. But I just wanted to like check in with teachers because teachers are maybe they're feeling love right now. We have Dan Cameron and Andy Bashir offering kind of competing plans for education in the state. So Cameron, dropped his, I think yesterday, perhaps, saying that he wanted to bump starting pay for teachers to $41,500 because right now Kentucky's like 44th in the nation in terms of like starting pay for teachers, so it's really low. But he also wants to make sure that school districts are following the law and have resource officers in their schools. And resource officers is code word for cops. They want to make sure they have cops in schools. That's really important for Cameron. And then also wants to make sure that they do more for discipline. So that's important to Cameron. And then there's some other stuff that's in his plan that I think is decent. So some tutoring resources. Making sure there's resources for teachers who are performing well and are kind of more advanced, that he wants to be able to give them raises. I think that's all well and good, right? But let's not forget where this guy is coming from, right? This is a guy who is loudly, proudly in support of SB 150, which we talk a lot about SB 150 in terms of the trans youth healthcare provisions, right? But it's also a don't say gay bill, right? So teachers can't say gay. It's also a bathroom bill to make sure that trans kids can't use the bathroom that aligns with their gender. It's also a forced outing bill, making sure that teachers report to parents if kids want to be called a different name or referred to in a different gender. They have to report that. So it's a horrible bill for teachers, putting them right in the middle of these culture wars, which the right wing loves to fan the flames of. So and this is of course the guy who picked for his running mate, one of the champions of the sewer bill, right? So wanted to play around with teachers' pensions, weaken teachers' pensions, take money away from teachers. So that's who he's got in terms of like the education priorities of Dan Cameron, which I don't think are legitimate, right? So meanwhile, Andy responds. He's got his education plan, which a lot of we've heard of it before because we've seen it before. He wanted to fully fund school transportation. I don't know why we'd want to fully fund school transportation. Jefferson Parish, parents, right? Like I don't know if you saw this, but the wheels literally fell off the bus, and maybe not literally, figuratively, the wheels fell off the buses in Jefferson Parish schools because they could not get kids to school. Their transportation system was just such a shambles, which is just tragic for everyone involved. But the fact that you're not paying to fund that transportation plan, things happen, right? Also, Andy's plan would, increase starting teacher pay to $42,000, which is $500 more than Cameron. But Andy's plan actually would be an 11% pay bump for everyone. Because I don't know if you noticed, but we all had a lot of inflation the past year, about a 10% spike in inflation. So really important that you increase everyone's salary, not just the starting teachers, right? So, I think it's clearly a much better plan, and I think it addresses a kind of whole systematic approach to education. The other thing that's a little bit gross is that Cameron's going out of his way to say that the drop we've seen in student performance, because widely seen across the country because of COVID and the pandemic, he's blaming Andy for that, saying, "Oh, Andy just wanted to keep kids out of school." Like, no, everyone across the country was keeping kids out of school. It was the best advice of the kind of medical profession that we were all following during the pandemic. I don't think Cameron, I don't know. I don't think his attacks about the COVID and the pandemic are landing like he thinks they are. But I think everyone understands that Andy did the best he could to keep us safe during an unprecedented crisis and public health challenge that we had never seen before. So I don't know. There's a couple of stories. I don't think teachers are going to fall for it, but maybe they will. I don't know. Doug, what do you think about the kind of teachers, kind of vying for teachers with these opposing health public education plans?
Well, he also needs to realize that there are teachers who are very strong against a lot of the tenets of SB 150.
Absolutely.
So, he thinks he's speaking to all teachers, but um, like with our grandchildren, they all have wonderful teachers, and we're very happy with their teachers and with the administration and that kind of thing. But the tenets of the SB 150 are just so horrible, and he's placing so much emphasis on that. He tries to he talks about Governor Bashir vetoing SB 150, and I believe that he should have. One of the tenets of it talked about the uh, children who were having sex change operations in Kentucky, and that kind of thing wasn't happening. I read something just today where Andy Bashir has said that if SB 150 had said we want to outlaw sex change operations for minors, he would have signed that bill if that's all that it did. But it didn't do just that. You mentioned outing kids to their parents. There's just so many horrible things with SB 150. And, part of it, I read recently, mentioned former Governor Bevin, and he was very much anti-teacher. And I think Cameron's trying to win some of those people back, but I'm hopeful that that's not going to work. Those words that he uses are not going to be recognized as something that's being truthful.
Yeah, yeah. It is just, it's sad to see the Cameron trying to claim that he's for teachers, right? When his entire kind of party's agenda is lined up square against them, right? And I think you are absolutely correct about the elements of SB 150. SB 150 continues to be a political football. Trans kids, unfortunately, continue to be political footballs, and this, the ads are like heated against them and trying to make Andy into some like very liberal culture warrior, right, who wants to force your kids to have sex changes, right? So and I think there was they had the GOP had gotten some information which they sat on about the fact that there have been a very small number of top surgeries, so non-genital gender reassignment surgeries on minors who are almost adults, right? I think the general thought is that it's maybe like 5. They could, reading between the lines, so folks who had mastectomies, because of their dysmorphia, and that was like, the recommended procedure, right? But the fact that that did in fact occur, when most of the folks who have been advocating against SB 150 were saying that gender reassignment surgery wasn't really happening for kids, and I guess it kind of depends on how you define gender reassignment surgery, right? So anyway, it's the obsession with what's in people's pants, right? And like, why are we dragging kids through this? It's just unsavory. It's just dragging this race into an area that politics shouldn't be in the middle of that, right? That should be between the healthcare provider, the parents, the kid, mental health professionals, and let's follow what the American Academy of Pediatrics and American Medical Association are recommending, right? And not politicians don't know that stuff, right? They shouldn't be in the middle of that for sure. But the idea that Cameron and his party want to get in between parents, their kids, and healthcare experts, it's just gross. It's dehumanizing, and we're dragging people into a political fight that they didn't want to be in. They didn't volunteer for this. So let's and the fact that we're forcing teachers to put them in the middle of it as well, it's just gross. And I am absolutely I am pretty sure most people are going to see through this, right? But a lot of people don't really pay attention to politics. A lot of people are not watching this live stream right now and are not like reading the newspaper every day about these issues. So I think it's really incumbent on us to like share the news about it, because the attack ads are unavoidable, right? You can't miss the attack ads no matter what you're watching. And it's really important that we kind of educate folks about the kind of reality of these situations for sure. Doug, any final thoughts about trans kids as political footballs in this election season?
Well, I want to go back to SB 150 again, because it did so much more than it banned gender affirming care, things that are reversible. It basically said your doctor, your parents don't know what's good for you. I know what's good for you. Cameron knows what's good for you, but they're just wading into an area where they should let parents and let children get the kind of care that they need and desire to get.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we're going to move on. It's been a minute. Very excited to bring back one of my favorite segments because it has its own theme song. We're going to move to Doug Price is Right and a deep dive on a really important issue that does, in fact, play a role in this political season for sure.
Welcome to another edition of Doug Price is Right. Tonight I'm going to talk about the ongoing battle between environmentalists, utility companies, the general public, and legislative, county, governmental elected officials. But first, some background, going back to a May 10th story when I talked about, on Kernels of Truth, when I talked about now Lieutenant Governor candidate Robbie Mills and how he helped along a bill supported by Joe and Kelly Craft. Senator Robbie Mills, who's a Republican from Henderson, filed SB 4 during the 2023 legislative session. The bill changed the requirements of shutting down coal generating facilities, essentially making electrical generating utilities older plants to generate electricity. LG&E and KU and Duke Energy opposed the legislation, as did the Kentucky Association of Manufacturers, which stated this will lead to higher electricity costs and increasing costs passed on to the consumer. Let's take a look at information from the Kentucky Registry of Election Finance. In 2022, Joe and Kelly Craft gave $2,000 each to Senator Mills and an additional 17 other people, mostly legislators. Of those legislators, 13 voted for SB 4 and 3 against. I would expect Senator Mills voted for it since it was his bill. The Crafts gave $10,000 each to the Kentucky Senate Republican Caucus Campaign Committee and the Kentucky State Republican Executive Committee. Kelly gave $5,000 to the Kentucky House Republican Caucus Campaign Committee. That was in May, and now Mills is on the campaign ticket with Cameron. I've heard people say that Mills was chosen because he is from a rural area. I'm from that area, and I think Henderson County would refute that assertions. It's not that rural. One has to wonder if there's any connection between the selection of Mills by Cameron and the Crafts. Perhaps we will learn more about this by perusing future campaign finance reports, and we'll be there to report that. I want to take a step back in time and then talk a little bit about current issues. There are a lot of turns and twists to this story. From an article in WEKU in March of 2022, then Representative Angie Hatton, along with a bipartisan group of lawmakers from Eastern Kentucky, opposed the sale of Kentucky Power to Liberty Utilities. It was going to be around $3 billion. They opposed the sale because they believed it would benefit the company more than it would Eastern Kentucky. Hatton is quoted as saying, "It was a $589 million in profit that we felt was an undue windfall for Kentucky Power." 2 months later, the Kentucky Public Service Commission approved the sale. Then the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission stepped in and denied the transaction in December 2022. According to an article from Energy Central in February 2023, American Power submitted a new application to the FERC and noted that the Kentucky PSC had approved the sale. The article noted that now the PSC opposes the sale, noting that they were limited by law as to their ability to deny the sale. Here's a little info from the PSC website. There are 3 commissioners, 3 people who sit on this, and they make all of these decisions that affect so many people. The commissioners include the chair, Kent Chandler, vice chair, Angie Hatton, yes, former state representative, Angie Hatton, and Mary Pat Reagan. They're all appointed to varying terms by current Governor Beshear. And believe me, they earn their money. The Herald Leader reported on the LGE/KU proposal to decommission 4 coal and 3 gas plants, build 2 natural gas combined cycle facilities, 2 solar facilities, 1 battery storage facility, and 4 solar purchase agreements. For future reference, the case number is 2022-00402. Recordings regarding this case and other cases can be found on the PSC website and or the PSC YouTube channel. Those are fun to watch. I watched an online public meeting where several people spoke in opposition to these plans. Commenters noted this is a complex case, but all fossil fuel plants should be retired and not build new fossil fuel plants. They need to focus on renewable energy, focus more on insulation, promote policies that produce energy saving, and one noted, we owe this to future generations. One last mention of something we have covered in the past. Why place a natural gas pipeline under the pristine beauty of Bernheim Forest? Profit over the environment. Those 3 individuals read every comment that is received. They read every comment, and one would expect the applications are very detailed, so an enormous amount of information to take into consideration. Over the next several months, everyone will have an opportunity to connect with the PSC and express their opinions and be involved in the process. And channeling my inner Jimmy Buffett, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Back to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, deep dive into the coal-coddling folks in our capital. We did have Lane Boldman on a few weeks ago to talk about the proposal in front of the PSC. So there's some resources there. One thing I think the comment period is closing very soon. I know there's a hearing tonight in Louisville, but I think the comment period closes like on the 22nd or something. So if you've not taken action on this one and urged the PSC to reject the new natural gas plants and instead lean into coal and solar, you can absolutely still send that message, which Doug noted they will have to read. So no cursing, please. Let's be polite here. All right, so I'm going to put that action alert link in the chat so you can just go ahead and add your comment very easily there. And then we're going to move on. So really exciting. Doug, thank you so much for bringing back Doug Price is Right. Really important issue to cover. And next, we're really thrilled to bring on a returning guest. So Adam Edelen is somebody that I think is familiar to a lot of people. He ran a great campaign for governor not too terribly long ago. Did not win the primary, but had a great campaign, brought up a lot of really important issues, and has now been very active in solar energy development in Kentucky. I decided I wanted to connect back to with Adam because of, one of his new projects was getting a lot of attention, so we're going to talk to him about that. But really, I thought it made a lot of sense because today is in fact the anniversary of the signing of the Inflation Reduction Act. So we want to get into that a little bit. But Adam, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome back to the show.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for having me back. It's a big, big day. The Inflation Reduction Act is a year old, and it's had already had enormously positive consequences for the country and for those of us who care about employing Americans and the jobs of the future, and for those of us who understand that there is no planet B. It's a huge deal, and I'm thrilled that you have me on to celebrate it.
Well, yeah. So why, if so, say I'm just Joe Schmo and I'm not really paying that much attention to politics. Why should I care what Joe Biden and Joe Manchin decided to do about inflation a year ago? What's this bill all about?
Well, relative, especially to the climate provisions, Aaron, um, the economy of the next 50 to 100 years in this country is going to be dictated by the electrification of everything. This is the greatest wealth creating opportunity we've seen since the advent of the internet. One day it could even be larger. But what the Inflation Reduction Act is it positioned America to be the global leader in fighting climate change and in making the economy building investments that will drive success to just about every part of the country, right? So the electrification of everything will be the defining economic characteristic of at least the next half century, probably the next century. And the countries and states and communities that are positioning their people to benefit from this enormous cultural and economic powerhouse will see tremendous benefits. Those that don't will be run over. And so, what the Inflation Reduction Act has done, particularly in the climate and the green energy space, is it has cemented the United States as the global leader in this space. It won't be China. Europe can't catch up. It's going to be the United States, and that's extraordinary because it means, with the work that we're doing, reimagining old energy communities, whether that's Appalachian coal country or the work we're doing in the oil and gas fields of the Permian Basin in the Western United States, we can diversify the economy. We can create new energy opportunity and help transform economies and ready people who literally powered the industrial development of this country for 100 years. I mean, Aaron, that's a key point. We have done so much and have a uniquely American debt to miners and their communities. They provided the energy and the material that built this country into industrial powerhouse that enabled us to win 2 world wars. We owe a debt to them. And I think the way we pay that debt back is by making them relevant to the opportunities of the 21st century. And so that's what we're working to do. The Biden administration not only has bought that vision, but has doubled down on it in the most ambitious infrastructure plan and budget since the New Deal. So this is huge. It's enormous. It's something that needs to be celebrated, and it means that America is going to be not only on the right side of history, but that our people are going to benefit economically from the incentives and the investments of their government.
Excellent. Yeah, it's interesting. It is something that the Navigator polling company, characterized it this way. On the first anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act being signed into law, 2 in 3 Americans continue to support it.
Yep.
So by a 43-point margin, 65% of Americans support the Inflation Reduction Act when described as legislation that will give Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices, will bring down health insurance premiums, and invest in clean energy like wind and solar. 1 in 3 strongly support the legislation, 35%. Only 22% oppose it. And support is strong across partisanship, including 9 in 10 Democrats like it, majority of independents like it, and then 2 in 5 Republicans. So, it's still definitely weighted towards, Democrats and independents supporting the legislation, but it is, it's widely supported, right? And this level of support is virtually identical to the level of support for the IRA in August 2022 when the law passed. But despite these high levels of support, a decreasing share of Americans actually report having either seen, read, or heard about the legislation. Only 41%, which is down 10 points from mid-March of this year. 3 in 10 independents report seeing, hearing, reading anything about it. So people really like the idea of the IRA, but very few folks know that it's actually happening, which I think is a real challenge.
There's no doubt. And Aaron, that will, the outcome is preordained. In 50 years, we'll talk about, our grandchildren will talk about the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure bill in the same hushed tones that we talk about Roosevelt's New Deal investments. The trick and the challenge and the obligation of progressives like us is to spread the word about what these projects are doing. I'm not too panicked about the people not yet connecting these to the president, connecting these projects to the president's agenda, because infrastructure investment, the projects always trail the investment, right? And so, our project in Martin County, Kentucky, which is a $231 million private capital investment on a 2,000-acre mine site on a mountaintop removal site 3 or 4 miles from where Lyndon Johnson launched the war on poverty. We're going to have our first jobs fair here in the next few weeks. We've got the opportunity to put back to work 300 out-of-work miners or others displaced by the disappearance in the coal economy with really good construction jobs. This project is, others will be able to follow this project because of the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, right? So, we've got this project that I think a lot of people are aware of. Toyota came in and bought the power. It's a very big deal. We'll be under construction in about 8 weeks. We recently announced another project that is literally almost 5 times the size of our Martin County project at the Starfire mine in Breathitt, Knott, and Perry counties, where the EV powerhouse Rivian has come in and agreed to buy the first 100 megawatts of that project. That one is literally happening because of the Inflation Reduction Act. This is gonna catch up speed. My company is now in 13 states. We expect while we've got half dozen coal to solar projects advancing in the eastern United States, we're super excited about a project in Hobbs, New Mexico, which is the heart of the Permian Basin, an oil and gas community where we're going to make an enormous private capital investment with a project in eastern New Mexico. And so reimagining the green energy movement as an opportunity to bring green energy economic opportunities to fossil fuel communities is incredibly exciting. And it's gotten an enormous adrenaline boost because of the leadership of the Biden administration and the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. As I mentioned earlier, like one of the reasons I reached out to you because I saw the news about that $1 billion project, and you mentioned kind of some of the drivers behind it. Doug, did you have a question specifically about it, or just let's see? Yeah, just tell us a little bit more about kind of how that came about and the role of Edelen Renewables. Like, what do you do in these? Like, you're not buying the power, you're not necessarily installing the solar panels. Like, how do you operate in this space?
We're the project developer, which means we put the land together, we bring it to finance the projects and construct the projects, and play a big role in securing an off-taker to buy the power, right? So in Martin County, we partnered with a huge national development firm called Savion. We advanced this project. We've literally been at it for years. We've engaged the local leadership of the community. We've created linkages and partnerships between the workforce and economic development agencies, the community and technical college, to make sure that the folks who work on this site have the opportunity to earn a portable and stackable skills credential in what is the fastest growing segment of the American economy. In the project at Starfire, we literally originated. We originally worked with the landowner, packaged the project, brought in a great firm called Bright Knight, another national developer, to help us finance and construct the project. Got the power sold to Rivian, and that one is just so exciting because we have that one is so large in scope and scale that we could build for 10 years there. What I'm very proud of is that our little company based here in Lexington, Kentucky, procured that land, and it's 7,200 acres. That is the largest private land acquisition for a renewable energy project in the eastern United States, and that was spearheaded by a Kentucky company, done in partnership with with a coal company who understands that we've got to diversify our economy. So we're building bridges, creating win-wins, and I think have a role in transforming economies and bringing opportunity to people who need it and deserve it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I do love the fact that Rivian is connected to that big billion-dollar project. One of the other pieces of the IRA, you mentioned the kind of electrifying everything. One of the biggest needs there is our transportation system moving from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. More and more consumers are kind of falling in love with this technology. More and more politicians are falling in love with the jobs that are coming along, right? So Andy Beshear will not shut up about Kentucky being the EV battery capital of the country, which I don't know if we've run the numbers. I'm not 100% sure that's still true. Georgia has landed a bunch of big projects. North Carolina has landed a bunch of big projects. But Kentucky has landed huge projects thanks to Ford for sure. What was that, Adam?
We're in the game though, right? And so
absolutely.
So in the green energy revolution is going to be it's already the primary economic driver that will speed up. The number of people buying EVs is far ahead of schedule. It's exceeding every projection, and it's not just that. We're going to upgrade our infrastructure. We're going to literally electrify our power. Electric power will be the source of powering almost every segment of our lives. And so the opportunity when you have a technological and cultural and economic revolution occur all at the same time, the opportunity is to be able to catapult your people far into the future. And if you miss the opportunity, you actually end up further behind. And so a frustration of mine is all of this good stuff is happening in Kentucky despite Frankfurt, not because of it, right? We've got a legislature that is outright hostile to the green energy economy. They can't slow it down. It is an irrepressible force. I love reminding people that more coal-fired plants closed down in 4 years of Donald Trump than 8 years of Barack Obama. And the reason isn't government policy. It's because it is a market force. And so when you see the largest companies in the world advertising on television at night, that they're aggressively pursuing these sustainability goals and will be carbon neutral by 2025, 2030, 2035. Folks, that's not because of anything the government's done. It's because it is a reaction to the market. And the vast majority of people under the age of 40, including Republicans, believe in climate change. And that's showing up in market behavior. And that's why the biggest companies in the world, from Facebook and Amazon and Apple and Google to Anheuser-Busch, Walmart, Toyota, Ford, General Motors, the near entirety of the Fortune 500 are so aggressively moving in this direction because they're responding to consumer pressure. And that's the reality of the new world. And so what government officials have to decide in places like Kentucky and West Virginia is, are we going to benefit from this irrepressible market force, or are we going to be run over by it? And that really is the political background. The truth of the matter is there's nothing a politician in Kentucky can do to slow down this transition or negatively impact my business, candidly. It's so much more powerful than that. But if we had leadership that was more progressive and more forward-looking, we would realize opportunity for our people that I think a lot of folks can't even conceive.
Yeah, it's interesting though. They're still trying, Adam. Like you can say that they're not going to be able to slow it down, but they are trying desperately. We just heard Doug Price is right, kind of going in on one of those elements. There's the whole anti-ESG piece. We've got I think the current auditors, like that's what she's most proud of, is that she's like gone after ESG, like for corporations who environmental and social governance being something that corporations care about, and Republicans think it's the end times if corporations actually have to do math to care about their environmental and social governance and impacts. So it's one of the other fights they're picking on this stuff, and I get the economic forces are kind of irresistible to a degree, but I think there's also this kind of political consideration that could slow things down. Maybe not your business, maybe not solar because of kind of some of the market pressures, but I do know from a kind of consumer adoption perspective, right now there's kind of an explosion in EVs, and there's more and more models, and more people are excited about those models and want to get them. But there also is this kind of, it's being lumped into a political fight, right? You've got Donald Trump, that guy has added EVs on his list of grievances as part of the thing to scare people about is, oh, they're going to take away your internal combustion engine and force you to use an EV that won't work in the winter, which of course is a lie. And, God doesn't have any facts, right? But he just tells these stories. So, I think it's playing to a component of our kind of political landscape, people who really do want to like lean into those culture wars, or they listen to Fox and get scared, and so that can have an impact, because we didn't have a political fight about, flip phones, right? People just got to the new phone and saw the technology advancing and embraced it because it was an improvement. And I think now EVs are a clear improvement, but because the kind of conversation is so muddled by a lot of misinformation, we've got some challenges here. And I just wonder your thoughts about what can we do as folks who care passionately about the future to help kind of tell the truth and dispel some of the kind of misinformation that's out there.
Well, Aaron, I think the platform that you and Doug are providing here is incredibly valuable. I think it is about pushing back, and I think it's about, frankly, being a voice for common sense. And this is just an extraordinary time. And while Donald Trump may have a cod lock on 30% of the population, it's by no means. And can they hinder? They may be able to hinder the forces of history, but they're so powerful. There's an inevitability to this. I'm certain that there was, whale blubber oil salesmen, I'm sure, put up a hell of a fight. I'm sure that there were a segment of the people who hated the idea of black and white televisions becoming color. And I remember the pushback. I'm old enough to remember when nobody wanted cell towers in their communities, and now they complain when there are pockets where you don't have coverage. Guys, we're not arguing outcome with these folks because it's gravitational. But what we need to do is be advocating for the economic opportunities of embracing the future rather than being hostile to it. I've often said gravity, what the future and gravity have in common is they really don't care about your opinion. And so, that's where we are. And I think we've got to we being progressives, those of us who are in the space of green energy, have got to do a better job of connecting the real world economic opportunities created as a result. And one of my great frustrations, and I think honestly, this could be one of the great political failures of Kentucky, is that we never contemplated a renewable energy future, but beyond that, we never contemplated the collapse of coal. And that's an outlier. I'm a farm kid from Meade County. My dad took the buyout for the tobacco program after I started at UK my freshman year. We did a brilliant job of planning for the transition of the tobacco economy, right? I mean, when I was a boy, there were 85,000 tobacco farm families in Kentucky. Now there are a couple of thousand. Doug, you live in Cynthiana, which used to be the world capital of burley tobacco. We planned for it. The government got on the side of diversification. We made the cigarette companies pay for that diversification. And as a result, my dad is substantially better off than he was 25 years ago, as are the entirety of the agricultural community. So we had leadership and foresight and the courage to do the right thing for tobacco farmers. We've not done it for coal miners, and coal miners ought to be really pissed, because instead of a government that planned for what's next and provided them that metaphorical bridge to the 21st century, we had, and it was bipartisan. We told these folks that they could go on doing it forever, that if there was a change in the White House, that their economy would reemerge, and it didn't, because economics, whether this is good or bad, folks, I'm going to leave to other people. The fact of the matter is the market is amoral. It doesn't care. It finds the most efficient, profitable way to operate, and there is a legitimate criticism of that. But when we can when we can harness those market forces to provide opportunities for our people, the very people who literally powered the industrial development of this country and won both the wars, we ought to do it. And that ought not to be political. And so, listen, there are folks who continue to push back, but the proof is in the pudding. And literally, I am partnered with a number of coal companies and coal land companies who want to be in this space. And the great irony is that every major coal company in the United States, not just in Kentucky, every major coal company in the United States is either pursuing a renewable energy play or evaluating it. Every single one of them. And I talk with a lot of them about the madness in the Kentucky State Capitol. It's actually humorous that the folks the very folks that these elected officials in Frankfurt say that they're representing are working with me to bring green energy opportunities to the coal field.
I thought it was remarkable that so many coal voices stood up and endorsed Andy kind of right out of the gates, right? So the fact he's kind of telling people the truth about what's going on in these communities and working hard to support them. But this transition is underway, as you note. I think by the time the battery factories that have been announced and are being constructed right now, by the time those are kind of going and blowing, there are going to be more people building EV batteries in Kentucky than mining coal, right? There's been over $120 billion in private investments because of these IRA and other big policies. 60,000 jobs have been announced in the EV manufacturing supply chain just since that IRA was signed a year ago. So it's real. There's a real jobs, but without intentionality, you aren't going to connect these natural resource kind of jobs to the new jobs, right? It's not, you got to be thoughtful about it. You got to put resources in to make it happen. And I think there are absolutely resources, but they're not necessarily easy to use. We covered this actually a couple of episodes ago, some of the federal programs that are out there and the grants are available and how communities need to be smart about getting after them, and there needs to be support to help them do that. But yeah, that was a really good point, Adam, and I think there's a huge political failure in that we have kind of allowed these coal communities to be abandoned that way, for sure. But Doug, I know you've got a political question for Adam.
Yes, I do. And I probably shouldn't even ask this because listening to you, you're doing a whole lot better work than what you could be doing if you were to get back into politics. I know that you were elected as auditor of public accounts and ran for the governor's position. Do you have any plans to get back into politics in the future? Are you better off where you are?
Doug, it's a great question. I ask myself that about every day. The short answer and the honest answer is I don't know. I'm having a blast now. What I do know is that my level of impatience is more rewarded in the private sector than it was in the political sphere. And if I have a talent that maybe helped me shine a bit in the political space, is that I've always had a clear vision of what the direction I thought Kentucky should go in. I'm very good at building teams to help realize that vision. This really isn't a time and place in our political history, I'm afraid, that rewards that kind of skill set, right? So, we are two announced projects, and we have many, many more, but the two that have been announced reflect a $1.3 billion private capital investment in Eastern Kentucky coal country. We're replicating those efforts again in the Permian Basin and the oil and gas fields of the Western United States. We'll be making some more big news here in the next several weeks. I love what I'm doing. I'm a future builder. And so I think that skill set is probably a better match for the private sector for now. But you never know, man. I love Kentucky. I love our people. And I firmly believe that the systemic and endemic problems that we've got here of poverty, of ill education, of ill health, are all things that can be solved by somebody who's a problem solver. And so, maybe my time will come, maybe it won't, but we sure are making the most of it right now. And I really appreciate that question. I'm glad I haven't been forgotten.
Well, I'm a fan. You're an amazing person. You're doing amazing work. And if you decide to get back into the political side of it, I'm on your side.
Well, thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. Yeah, what we definitely have to do is get this great Democratic ticket elected this fall. Because if we all think we've seen the crazy over the last 4 years, can you imagine what it would have been like if Matt Bevin were governor, right? I mean, Andy and I have our differences. We're fundamentally very different men, but he has responded, I think, really well in crisis, and certainly ought to have a second term. But even if you don't like Andy, my God, look at the alternative. I mean, Daniel Cameron is a puppet for the worst, most reactionary forces in Kentucky politics, and I don't think he has a lot of original thought, and that's a problem because I was a chief of staff to a governor, as you all know. I worked my way through college as an aide to Governor Patton, 20 some years ago. That job is so important because it really does set the bar to which the rest of Frankfurt should perform, right? And if we've had Andy there, being civil and being a calm, steadying influence in really difficult times. I just want people to imagine if it wasn't him. And so, I'm an Andy fan, going to vote for him in the fall. I'm a fan of this ticket, which I think is really well rounded out. And I think we got to make that fight, because if not, the next 4 years in Kentucky could be an unmitigated disaster if you care about public education or health care or new economy, economic development, or the notion that in a civil society we owe a little something to each other. All of those things will be under dramatic attack for the next 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point to leave it at. Thank you so much again for your time, Adam Edelen Renewables, doing important work developing renewable energy projects in Kentucky and across the country. Kentucky still remains dead last in wind and solar production, so you've got your work cut out for you, Adam. But the two big projects that have been announced, I think, are phenomenal. Very excited to see them come to fruition, and congratulations.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate you much. Good luck.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to our call to action. And actually, Adam, you're welcome. We'd love to see you at that meeting. We are meeting up on Saturday because we need you to help ensure 4 more years of a compassionate Commonwealth. Give us your views. Work with us to expand the voter support for Andy and that great slate that Adam was just mentioning, all of our statewide candidates. Join us at our campaign kickoff meeting this Saturday, August 19th at Pivot Brewery. We're going to have Adriel Camuel, the candidate for the 93rd District, longtime friend of the show, Representative Sherilyn Stevenson, who, as I said, knows a thing or two about winning close races. Our regular co-host, Nima, Willie, featured speaker, Representative Colonel Pam Stevenson. We also have a couple of new additions to the show. Auditor candidate Kim Reeder is going to be there. And even more exciting, I'm pretty sure we're going to have, tell me if we don't, Nate, but we are going to have the world premiere of an amazing new campaign song. It's Andy for Me by our own talented producer, PK secretary, writer of theme songs, Nate Orshan. This is an earworm you will not want to avoid. And a campaign kickoff that we'd be terribly honored if you join. Called some of our supporters this weekend to invite them to the event. And I tell you what, I think the audience will be worth the price of admission. Of course, it's free, but the community you'll experience will be inspiring if you show up, because the people that are there are doing that stuff all for the right reasons. They really want to, turn our Commonwealth purple. They really want to make sure that Andy gets back there. And even if Colonel Pam decides to kind of work blue, insult every single one of us with descriptive 4-letter words, the community is going to be inspiring. I promise you that. And Colonel Pam is a minister, so she's not going to swear at us. I promise you that too. All right. So RSVP, let us know that you want to show up. We're going to have some food. We've been talking to Shelly, who's been doing the organizing of this event, kind of the thankless task of organizing this event. She's lining up the menu, so there'll be some food for you to nosh on and nibble on. It's at Pivot, so there's going to be some great adult beverages available to you. We'll also bring some, some non-alcoholic options for you. So please do join us. That's it. We're going to launch our campaign. As I said, we have 83 days to do the work, and we need people to do the work. And I think it's going to be a very satisfying and rewarding 83 days if we get what we are shooting for. So that's it for the call to action. And I'm going to hand it off to Doug to close out our show.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm really looking forward to this coming Saturday. That's just a few days off. We're going to have a lot of fun, and you'll be very informative. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project, the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, commonly referred to as CAVE, and are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network, Bruce Maples. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Make sure to join us next week, where we'll be joined by the 93rd State House District candidate, Adriel Camuel. Should be a great interview and episode. Production of episode 126 was by the amazing Nate Orshan. You got to come to our campaign kickoff to hear his song. And thank you, Nate, for the theme songs. You'll find more information and music at natosongs.com. If you missed our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, audio podcast and our show notes are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. If you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening right now. Logo and some graphic content provided by Couchfire Media. More information can be found at couchfiremedia.com. And since Kimberly is listening, she always likes to say, do something nice for somebody. And we hope to see you next week. Bye.